So now, ladies and gentlemen, I have the great pleasure once again to invite another inspirational speaker to the podium. I would like you to give a warm welcome to Dr. Amy E. Johnson, who is a conservation biologist and program director at the Smithsonian Conservation Biology Institute. And I would highly recommend Dr. Amy Johnson's TED Talk from July 2020 on bringing back the birds and citizen science. Great to see you again, Amy.
Thank you so much for having me.
Whenever you're ready, go right ahead. We're all ears.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. It's my first time in Belgium. What a beautiful city Brussels is. So I was asked to join you all today to provide a quick lecture on a case study, just as an example of a successful collaborative conservation initiative that's working with producers to really move conservation forward. So I am a conservation scientist at the Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute, and I'm also the program director for Virginia Working Landscapes, which is a research-based program at the Smithsonian, and I'll get a little more into that in a couple of minutes. But first, I wanted to introduce you to my office. And let's see, my clicker's not working. There we go. Oh. Okay, well, here we go. So this is the rural Virginia countryside. And actually, it's a video that's not working, but that's okay. So you can see it's a mixed mosaic of agricultural lands. We've got really dense forests actually leading up into Shenandoah National Park. So our agriculture in our region, at least, is mostly cow-calf operations. We also have hay farms as well as crop farms, and these are intersected by beautiful winding country roads, trickling streams, and rivers that eventually lead out into the Chesapeake Bay. So clean water is really important where we are. Wildlife is very important where we are. And our area is so full of diverse wildlife. Here we go. It just started. So we've got a plethora of amphibian species. Actually, we're known as one of the global biodiversity hotspots when it comes to amphibians. But we've also got a plethora of birds, insects. It's an incredible place to live and work. But unfortunately, a lot of our species are in decline, and specifically our species that occupy grassland habitats. So in the United States, or in North America, actually, we've lost 99% of our native grasslands. So all of our species that rely on this habitat are at risk of extinction. So this includes species like the bobolink. This species is native to Virginia, but we rarely find them anymore. So for every 5 species or 5 bobolinks that we had in the 1970s, we now only have 2 remaining. This is Torrey's mountain mint. It's an incredible herbaceous perennial. It's actually globally imperiled, and it's extinct from nearly all of its native states. So we barely see this native perennial anymore in Virginia. Oh, this is the northern bobwhite quail. This is a species known especially by conservation hunters. It's been hunted for decades and is a family tradition, but we've lost the population by more than 80%. And so a lot of folks come up to me and say, where did our quail go? Where did our quail go? And it really is driving a lot of conservation impact and a lot of conservation funding in Virginia. And this is the rusty patch bumblebee. This is the first bumblebee to ever make the endangered species list, because scientists found that more than 90% of its population had completely disappeared. So if we want to work to conserve these species, we need to think about where they live, right? Where do they survive and what habitats do they need? Well, in Virginia, at least, a lot of our grasslands are privately owned, and they're so very heavily impacted by agricultural intensification, pesticide use. Invasive species is a really big issue where we are, and this is all exacerbated by climate change, of course. So if we want to be successful in moving conservation forward, we absolutely have to facilitate a model that works for both biodiversity as well as people. And so this is why Virginia Working Landscapes was started. It was actually initiated by a group of landowners that came to us at Smithsonian and said, we want some science to really back up how we can be better land stewards. And we invited a lot of partners to the table to really put our minds together about how we could put together research projects that could do this. And so Virginia Working Landscapes brings together Smithsonian scientists, but also scientists from other academic institutions, nonprofits, landowners, producers, community scientists. We have a whole cohort of volunteers. And we all work together to collectively study and promote the conservation of native biodiversity on our farm landscapes through scientific research, through community engagement, as well as education. So we started Virginia Working Landscapes in 2010, and we started with about 10 landowners. And to date, we've grown to more than over 300 at this point, and we have done research on over 95,000 acres across Virginia of private land. So our grasslands include cattle farms, they include hay fields, they also include post-agricultural fields, so they aren't in production anymore, but maybe they're used for hunting or recreation, and even wildlife preserves we're also looking at, and remnant prairies as well. So a great diversity of grasslands exist in Virginia. So I actually started with Virginia Working Landscapes back in 2011 as a volunteer. I was interested in learning more about how we could bridge science with landowner engagement, and I joined as a bird surveyor. And one of the first properties I was assigned to was Oxbow Farm. So Oxbow Farm is owned by Beatrice and Adi van Guntard. They're actually part of the Friends of the Countryside group, so some of you may recognize them. And I would call up Beatrice and say, I'm coming out for my bird survey, 5:30 a.m. Monday, and she'd be like, I'll see you there. And I'm like, what? She came out for every single bird survey that I did on that farm, and I was so inspired by her curiosity, her knowledge. She knew so much about the existing species at Oxbow Farm, but she also had so many questions, like, how many clutches is the red-winged blackbird going to have before it migrates south? Or how do I promote these wildflowers throughout the season when I have horse and cattle pastures and hay fields? Or where are the bumblebees nesting? Is my tilling going to affect how the bumblebees reproduce? She had so many questions that I just couldn't answer as a volunteer. And so I was really driven to take these questions to the next level, and I started a PhD through the Virginia Working Landscapes program and Smithsonian to study how grassland birds are influenced by our land management practices. I ended up learning a lot, and like most PhDs, I ended up with a whole lot of more questions. And so now I'm fortunate to lead the program, and I oversee a team of biologists and graduate students who are answering a wide range of questions from habitat restoration to ecosystem services provided by our wildlife. We're also looking at bee-friendly beef. How can we incorporate pollinator-friendly practices into beef farms? And I'll just provide an example. This is one of my students, Bernadette Wrigley, and she's actually in her 4th year of her PhD, and she's studying how specifically our haying and our grazing practices are influencing the reproductive success of our grassland birds. So this is an eastern meadowlark. It's my favorite bird, my spirit bird. And they reside in hayfields and pastures. And you know, when you drive through the countryside, you hear them, you see them a lot, so it's really difficult to comprehend that they've actually declined by 75%. And this is why. This is one of our nests from last season. These birds build their nest directly on the ground, completely woven into the hay and pasture grasses, so no one would even see they're there. But they do this right around the beginning of May through the middle of June. But above the grass canopy, this is what's happening, right? It falls at the same time as peak hay harvest. So when farmers are harvesting their hay at this time of the year, we see 100% mortality of these birds. So no wonder they've declined by 75%, and they continue to decline. So what do we do? Do we ask farmers to stop haying or stop grazing? No, we can't do that. I think in my younger days, that's what I was trying to do. But since I've been hanging out with farmers, I know better. And so what we've done at the beginning of Bernadette's study is we brought farmers to the table and we asked them, how can we come up with a win-win solution that would work for you and would also work for the birds? We also brought in industry experts at American Farmland Trust, that's Jacob in the cowboy hat. They have just been awarded one of these climate smart grants. So they're doing a lot to push more regenerative agriculture practices in our region. So together, we put together an experiment that incorporated all of their interests in grassland management that could potentially overlap with grassland bird conservation. And we tested out several scenarios of haying and grazing, and we actually ended up identifying two that really ended up successfully allowing these birds to reproduce during the nesting season. And those are summer stockpiling. So this is when the cattle are grazed early, and then they're taken off the field right around May 1st or so, and they're left off that field until maybe mid-July. So they're not grazing the field at that time of year, but then they can be grazing that later in the season when it's so hot that a lot of our grasses have gone dormant. So it actually extends the grazing season for the producer, and it leaves the field open for the grassland birds. We also found that delaying their hay would also really benefit these birds. But not every farmer can afford to delay their hay. We know that if you delay your haying, you're losing nutritional quality of that hay and potentially losing income. So we actually worked with a couple of organizations, and we were awarded a couple of grants to create an incentive program. If we really want farmers to try to adopt some of these practices, we're going to need to provide them with some incentives. And so we started paying farmers about 2 years ago for those who would either delay their hay or they'd try summer stockpiling for the first time and see how it goes. Each year we're learning new things, but overall it's been pretty successful. So this is one of our fields where we delayed the hay. So this is right around July 1st. So at this point, the farmer is able to harvest their hay, and or they could graze it. Either way, it's up to them and they can choose, but they still get paid per acre. And because it's been so successful, we're now working with the state, and for the first time this year, landowners and farmers can apply for state funding to actually adopt these two practices. They're getting up to $75 an acre through Farm Bill funding to adopt these bird-friendly practices, so we're really proud of how far this has gone. And I don't have calculations from 2023 yet, but we found in our 2022 season that we successfully fledged out at least 15,000 birds that wouldn't otherwise have been able to fledge. So we think this is a pretty impressive number, and it's a lot more than that now that we have the state involved. Thank you so much. Oh, I'm not done yet. I've got 2 more slides. So we wanted to be able to give these producers more, right? They're doing so much on their landscape. They are getting incentivized, but there's also farmers that are doing it without the incentive. And Smithsonian has developed a bird-friendly certification program for coffee and cocoa. And it's been really successful in these 2 industries. And so we brought our producers together and we asked them, is this something you'd be interested in? A bird-friendly beef certification label. We brought in a social scientist and we had a day-long meeting and we chatted with them about what this might look like. And at the end of the day, we learned from the producers that they love the idea of bird-friendly and they love the brand of the Smithsonian, but they're doing so much more than bird-friendly, right? They're improving soil health, they're helping improve water quality, air quality, they're preserving insect habitat, pollinators. They want more. And we were like, yeah, okay. So they encouraged us to go bigger. And so thanks to a 3-year grant from a family foundation in Virginia, we're now working with Smithsonian scientists and these producers to come up with a set of metrics. The producers are going to help us actually prioritize those metrics that work for them. So they sort of have a checklist that they can check off and say, here are the things I'm doing on my farm, and here's my overall conservation score. And they can tell their consumers, this is what we're doing, and this is how you should be buying your food, is by working with these farmers who are working to conserve our biodiversity and bring you these healthy foods at the same time. So this is what it looks like. And at the end of 3 years, we are hoping that we'll be able to have this metric system set up so that farmers and landowners can actually self-report the metrics that they've adopted. And then we'll be able to put signs on their properties. They can use the logo on their websites at farmers markets and just use it as a way to better educate our consumers. So all in all, I do want to point out we've been talking a lot about collaboration. And this is not, all of these things we're talking about today, this is not just a product of the Virginia Working Landscapes program. What's so important are all of these collaborators that helped us get here. So I'm not going to go through them all because I feel like I'm running out of time, but we would not have been here without any of these collaborators that have been here to support us. So to end, I just wanted to show this video because I think that working with producers is really a give and take. I spend a lot of time walking through fields with producers, just listening and learning, and oh my gosh, I've learned so much more from them than I learned from my PhD. But we also try to give back too. So we invite them out in the field to join us. They can come tagging birds with us, come nest searching if they have time. They're so busy this time of year. But this is an opportunity that we had a couple of our farmers join us when we were tagging meadowlarks, and they got to release these birds back into the wild. So it's moments like these that I feel very inspired and fortunate that we have such a supportive producer community that has contributed to the success of this work. So thanks so much.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Well, I think you would agree, ladies and gentlemen, that was extremely inspirational. And what I'd like to know, my question, forgive me for butting in there, but my question to you was, what was the key ingredient, would you say, for that collaboration and that buy-in from the farmers? You said that they took to it enthusiastically once they realized that there were gains, but it was a question of discussion, collaboration, conversations, evidence-based from what you say. But what is there one sort of silver bullet that you could sort of define as a scientist?
I'd say the silver bullet is partners that the producers trust. So we're really fortunate to work with American Farmland Trust, and Jacob Gilley is the leader of our sustainable grazing project in the region. He's a farmer himself, and our whole producer community looks to him, asks him for advice, and he has really done so much to help lead the way in introducing our science to the producers, getting them involved, and also being an advocate for birds. When he's off at agricultural conferences, he's giving talks on why farmers should care about birds. So it's been a really fun sort of give and take learning experience for all of us.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Dr. Amy E. Johnson, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.